Welcome back, ATST crew. Happy Friday to all of you. This is your host, Aiden Davis. This is the ATST show, and today I want to talk about Kenobi, Star Wars Rebels, and the ever-changing relationship of continuity between television shows, movies, comics, and novels. So, with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive on in. Now, I'm sure, like most of you, I don't know for certain, but for a lot of Star Wars fans, their most anticipated series is Obi-Wan Kenobi. We're getting Ewan back, we're getting Hayden back. This is a very big deal. We have not seen these two portray their characters in over 16 years at this point. It's a really big deal. And during the Disney Investor Day meeting, Kathleen Kennedy said that in the show, we're going to see the biggest showdown in a decade or of the century or whatever. And it's apparent that the showdown is going to be between Vader and Obi-Wan. Now, for some Star Wars fans, and I admit this was even me, people were always under the assumption that after Revenge of the Sith, Anakin and Obi-Wan didn't meet until A New Hope, which is kind of what has been established, and that might very well change. That definitely, most likely, will change after the Kenobi series has been released. But I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about other material that has been released around the time that Kenobi is set in, which is 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. And the first piece of content that popped into my head was, of course, Star Wars Rebels. Rebels starts, I think, 14 to 15 years after Revenge of the Sith, and then ends like 1 year before A New Hope. So there's that. And I was going back through the series a little bit, and something really caught my attention with regards to the concept of Vader and Obi-Wan having met before A New Hope. And this was a conversation held between, of course, Vader and Palpatine during the Season 2 premiere of Rebels. This is after Vader finds out that Ahsoka is alive. Ah, the apprentice lives. Vader's back on the Star Destroyer, and he gets into contact with Palpatine. Vader's like, yeah, Lothal rebels, they're broken. I made sure of it. They won't be a problem. But I encountered something very interesting. Skywalker's apprentice is still alive. And Palpatine's like, hey, we can't squander this possibility, this opportunity, because, and I quote from Palpatine, Skywalker's apprentice could lead us to other lost Jedi. Vader then says, such as Kenobi. Palpatine responds with, perhaps, if he lives. Let me say that again. Palpatine says, perhaps, if he lives. This whole interaction, it's very apparent in the way that it's set up, in the way that it's acted, that Vader and Palpatine have no knowledge that Obi-Wan is alive at this point in time. Vader's saying that it's more of a hopeful thought that he could get his revenge on Obi-Wan. And Palpatine kind of backs up that point like, yeah, perhaps, if he lives. Here's the thing, everyone. Vader doesn't dispute this point. And if we're to believe that Vader and Obi-Wan have a showdown 4 or 5 years before this, eventually, somehow, some way, Palpatine would have found out about it. Case in point, Vader first finds out about Luke. Palpatine finds out about Luke. He eventually finds out about him because Palpatine is always watching and trying to control Vader's actions. And further on into their relationship, Palpatine kind of sees Vader as replaceable, especially after New Hope. Granted, Rebels takes place before New Hope, but who's to say that the strain in their relationship hasn't already started? So, in my mind, I'm like, there's no way that Vader has fought Obi-Wan. After this fight, Obi-Wan drops off the radar again, and Palpatine doesn't find out about it. Palpatine could have found out through one of his entourage, his spy network, some Imperial officer looking for notoriety, whatever the case. Palpatine would have found out if Vader fought Obi-Wan before this conversation. Which brings me to my next point about the relationship of continuity between television shows, movies, comic books, and novels. And this relationship has changed in the past couple of years. In The Mandalorian, there were changes to the character of Cobb Vanth. It was different than the Aftermath trilogy, where he first showed up. And now we have Bad Batch. In the first episode of Bad Batch, Aftermath, we see Depa Billaba and her apprentice, Caleb Doom, aka Kanan Jarrus, who shows up in Rebels, of course. A couple years back, Kanan, had his own comic run. And in that comic run, we witness his Order 66 experience. And in that comic book, it is different than what happened in the Bad Batch. So this is a bigger example, or it might be on the same level, depends on the person, where auxiliary material is being overwritten by TV shows or movies. And then there's a much more minor point where by the third episode, I think some people thought, I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but some people think that Tarkin is already a Grand Moff, and people are trying to dispute this point because in the 2014 Tarkin novel, the rank of Grand Moff isn't created till 5 years after Revenge of the Sith, and Bad Batch takes place right after Revenge of the Sith. So there's that point too. Main purpose of that, me bringing that up, changing continuity between auxiliary material, between shows and movies as well. Who's to say if this is now going to be, it seems like it's a much more recurring theme happening in the story of Star Wars right now. Who's to say that for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, the whole interaction could be the first instance of a show/movie overriding another show/movie. Because based on the conversation in the Season 2 premiere of Rebels, Vader and Palpatine have no knowledge that Obi-Wan is still alive. Face value, if you go and listen to it, just look up Vader and Palpatine conversation in Rebels. Face value, they have no idea that Obi-Wan is still alive. It's just wishful thinking, like I said earlier. So, if that's the case, then other plot points and other stuff could be changed for other series. Who's to say that, it's been theorized that Ezra and Thrawn are going to be a big part of the Ahsoka series. Who's to say that what happened to them in Rebels gets changed? Because, I mean, if by the time that Kenobi comes out and the showdown is almost guaranteed to happen because of what Kathleen Kennedy said at the Investor Day, that's going to be a very clear retcon of previously established television material. Now, it might not be a big deal for some people, but I'm one of the people, I guess I could be one of the outliers, where it's like, well, I kind of understand shows overriding comics or novels, but if we're having shows overwrite shows, then what's the point of having those shows being previously established and then coming back later and overwriting them? It kind of messes with the continuity of the Star Wars story a little bit. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Let me know what you think. Am I just being crazy? Are my thoughts on the matter irrelevant? Am I looking too deep into this conversation in Rebels? Whatever it may be. As always, I have been your host, Aiden Davis. This has been the ATST show, and I will see all of you, the ATST crew, on the next video. Thanks for watching.